Welcome to the best Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 gun tier list. I'm gonna explain my rankings before I start the video. So basically, Cocaine Binge, Makes Me Bust, and Great are tiers in which I love using the gun a lot, and the guns have not too many flaws if they're in Makes Me Bust or Great. But in Cocaine Binge, it's a gun with no flaws. I love to use it all the time whenever I'm playing MW2. Just phenomenal guns. If it's in Makes Me Bust or Great, it just means it has like one flaw that kind of stops it from being a perfect gun completely. Probably just the recoil or certain attachments that don't go well with it. That's really all. I would use it just means that I would use the gun. It's not really a gun I use too much, or do I feel like it's necessary to use. It's just a gun that's there. And then we come down to what is this? What is this is basically a ranking where the gun is so bad. The recoil's terrible, the damage is terrible, just everything about that gun is terrible. Even the attachments can't save that terrible gun. Alright, the first gun being the 44 Magnum. So this is a gun I definitely like using if I have a tactical knife and a Kimbo, but FMJ is not too viable with it. Not much else to say about it. It's a pretty cool gun. Next up, we have one of the most overpowered shotguns in this entire game, the AA-12. I believe there was a massive oversight. No, not believe. Yes, there was a massive oversight with the shotgun. Well, it's really broken, especially with extended mags. I mean, you can literally just spray this thing, hold down the trigger. With the high damage as well, this really makes this one of the better shotguns to use in this game. It has high damage, you can spray and pray with it. What else do I have to say about this gun? Alright, next up on the list, we have the ACR. The ACR is an assault rifle with low damage and low recoil. But with Stopping Power Pro, no more low damage. It's one of the best assault rifles in the game because of how low the recoil is and because of the low damage, but even so, Stopping Power Pro can fix that within seconds. One of my favorite assault rifles in this game, definitely. Next up, we have the AK-47. The AK-47 was definitely another assault rifle that had a lot of attachments that were very viable to use. I mainly used extended mags, FMJ, or the suppressor with it. It's a really good gun. It has moderate recoil and high damage. I just remembered this game has like a wide variety of guns, so I'm gonna have to make this video quick. We're speeding things up now. Next up, the AT-4HS. I've only used it a few times, and I've only used it to take down enemy Harriers. That's about it. It's not the best launcher in the game, but you know, you'll use it at some point in the game. Next up, we have the AUG. The AUG is a high accuracy and high damage light machine gun. I've played around with this gun a decent amount, and I can definitely say it's one of the best light machine guns, but of course there's better options as well, but the AUG is pretty good as well. Alright, next up, the Barrett. Barrett is a low recoil semi-automatic sniper rifle of high damage. It's one of the best sniper rifles to use for long range encounters, and honestly there's nothing much else to say about it. It's very accurate, it has high damage, and it's just one of the more preferable sniper rifles to use in the game. Next up, we have the Desert Eagle, or as I like to call it, the misaligned Israeli. The Desert Eagle's iron sights are misaligned, which kind of gives that a huge flaw, and what sucks the most about it is how bad the recoil is on this gun. It's extremely high. Kimbo and FMJ don't work with this. The tack knife is the only attachment that's good, so it's not that good of a gun. Alright, next up, the F2000. The reason why the F2000 is in I would use it, and it may shock a lot of MW2 fans, it's just the gun isn't really that bad with recoil. The Desert Eagle is definitely worse than this in recoil. The damage is extremely low, but with stopping power, this helps out tremendously. It's not an assault rifle I would use considering there are better options. It's just there, pretty much. It's not a great gun by standards for this game, and it's not a horrible gun either. Alright, next up, the FAL. The FAL is a semi-automatic semi-automatic sniper rifle. The FAL is a semi-automatic assault rifle. It has low recoil and high damage. It's in Makes Me Bust because it's a really good gun. It's a very accurate assault rifle with really good damage, and almost all of the attachments are viable on this. The reason why it's not in Cocaine Binge is because I personally believe, come on, like, nothing can beat the SCARH and the ACR. Alright, next up we got the Famas. The Famas is a 3-round burst assault rifle with low recoil, or it's probably non-existing. I mean, the gun's pretty accurate, so it feels like recoil isn't even there. This is another assault rifle with low damage, but once again with Stopping Power Pro, that can just fade away within seconds. All of the attachments with this gun work pretty well. And it's a great assault rifle. I love using this thing a lot. An assault rifle with low recoil but also low damage, but of course that can be made up with Stopping Power Pro. This is my third favorite assault rifle in this game. It doesn't have too many flaws, which is why it's in Coke Binge. Alright, on to the Glock 18. The Glock 18 is a pretty decent gun, I would say, for the most part. There aren't too many attachments that this gun has that are viable with it other than the red dot sight, holographic sight, and akimbo. It's a decent secondary for the most part, but once again, there are better options, which is why this isn't great. The attachments are okay for the most part. Recoil is moderate, the damage is low, but of course, once again, with Stopping Power Pro, that should be fixed very quickly. When you're using akimbo, it's really fun to run around with this thing, which is the reason why I put this in great. Honestly, it's one of the best secondaries to use akimbo with. The biggest meme of a gun, the intervention. The intervention is a sniper rifle with low recoil and high damage. It's one of the easiest sniper rifles to pick up and use in this game, well, other than the semi-automatic sniper rifles. Extended mags, the heartbeat sensor, and FMJ all work with the intervention well. The silencer and the ACOG scope don't work too well with it. It's an easy sniper rifle to use, and that's the reason why it's in Coke Binge. Alright, next up, the Javelin. I'm just gonna summarize this quickly. The Javelin isn't necessarily a bad launcher to take down air support, it's just I would use it to take down air support. Nothing interesting about it that makes it stand out. For that reason, it's in I would use it. Next up, the L86. While the recoil is high for this gun, the damage makes up for it. The only attachment I couldn't really use with this gun was the ACOG scope, but every other attachment was fine. One of the best LMGs in this game for sure. The only problem with it is the ACOG scope in my opinion, and because of the recoil. Next up, the M1014. It's an Italian weapon, first thing to note. Second thing, it just feels like the AA-12. There's not much of a huge difference. The damage is the same and the recoil is the same. And even so, I think the AA-12 is better, because a lot of the attachments you can use better on the AA-12 than you can on the M10. Next up, the M16A4. It's similar to the Famas because it's a 3-round burst assault rifle, but the difference is the damage is higher and a few of the attachments that I wouldn't use on the Famas work better on the M16. The holographic sight is the best example of this. Next up, the M21 EBR. It's a semi-automatic sniper rifle with low recoil and high damage. I'm not a huge sniper guy, which is why this isn't great. It's a good gun, don't get me wrong, but even if I'm sniping, I mainly use the intervention or the Barrett. Alright, next up, the M240. I feel like the reason why this LMG was forgotten was because of how overpowered the SMGs and the ARs were in this game. Plus, the RPD and the L86 were better than this. While the recoil is low, the damage is very low as well. I would use it if I had to pick it up because I ran out of ammo on one of my guns, but that's really it. It's not really an LMG that's known that much in the game. I mean, the only time you would really use this LMG is, once again, if you're gonna pick up a gun from somebody if you have no ammunition left, or if you played the campaign of the game. That's really it. There's just better options. Next up, the M4A1. Okay, I know I said I was gonna speed things up now, but I'm actually gonna start doing that now. The M4A1 is an assault rifle with low recoil and low damage, but once again, and I've said this about 5 million times by now, stopping power can help with that. Every attachment is viable with this gun, and it's very satisfying to get a kill with, which is why it's in Makes Me Bust. Not much else to say here. Alright, next up, the M93 Rafika. The M93 Rafika is a 3-round burst submachine pistol. All the attachments work well with this gun. It has low recoil and high damage. Nothing else much to say here, but this is one of the best secondaries, which is why it's in Coke Binge. Alright, next up, the M9. A semi-automatic pistol with moderate recoil and low damage. Most attachments with this gun work. I put it in I would use it because there's better pistol options as secondaries in my opinion. I mean, to be honest with you, it's not the worst pistol, but you know, there's better options. And it feels like most other pistols like the USP and the Magnum. Next up, the MG4. Just like the M240, it has low damage and low recoil. All of the attachments with this gun work well. There's nothing really special about it, which is why it's in I would use it, because it's just going to be a last resort weapon. Next up, the Mini Uzi. It has low recoil and high damage. It's a fast shooting SMG. All of the attachments work perfectly on this gun, but you do have a range disadvantage because of how small the Uzi is. So there are better options for longer range encounters, and that's why the Mini Uzi isn't great. Next up, the Model 1887. Low recoil, high damage, and really nice range. This shotgun actually had the most range out of any other shotgun in this game and was broken at some point. It later on got nerfed. It's in Coke Binge because of the crazy range it has compared to any other shotgun in the entire game. Alright, next up, the MP5K. The MP5K has low recoil and high damage. All of the attachments work well with this gun. The only thing holding this gun back is its range. Other than that, it's a pretty good gun. Next up, we have the P90. Much like the MP5K, the P90 has low recoil and high damage. All of the attachments work well with this gun, but the longer range with the P90 is way better than the MP5K. This is exactly why it's in Makes Me Bust. Next up, we have the PP2000. The PP2000 is a submachine pistol with low recoil and high damage. Compared to the other submachine pistols in this game, it excels in long range. All of its attachments work well, and there's no flaws with this gun to be honest, which is the reason why it's in Coke Binge. Next up, the Ranger. While the recoil is low and the damage is fairly high, I wouldn't recommend using it. The Model 1887 is a better choice. It's basically like the Model 1887 stepbrother with less attention and love. I mean, the range is terrible with this gun. I have nothing else to say. I would only use it if I had to pick it up as a last resort. Next up, the Riot Shield. There's honestly no point in using this unless you're trying to defend yourself or complete challenges for the Riot Shield. There's no point in picking this over any other primary. Next up, the RPD. The RPD has low recoil and high damage, and it has fairly long range as well. It's one of my favorite LMGs. All of the attachments on this gun are perfect. There's not much else to say about this gun. Next up, the RPG. It's in the I would use it category because, I mean, it's pretty much like every single launcher once again. I would only use it if I had to take down air support. Next up, the SCARH. The SCARH is a fully automatic assault rifle. It has low recoil and high damage. It's my favorite assault rifle in the entire game because of how accurate this is. It has the greatest range of an assault rifle. Every single attachment on the SCARH is viable. All in all, it's a great assault rifle to use in this game. For that reason, it's in Coke Binge. Next up, we have the SPAS 12. The SPAS 12 has low recoil and high damage. All of the attachments work very well on this gun, especially the grip. The grip attachment on the SPAS 12 is better than any other shotgun that I've used, other than the AA-12. It's a really fun pump action shotgun to use, and for that reason, it's in Coke Binge. Next up, we have the Stinger. Once again, it works like every other launcher, and I would only use it to take down air support. For that reason, it's in the I would use it category. Next up, we have the Striker. Compared to every other shotgun, the range is terrible with this shotgun. The Striker is honestly one of the worst shotguns in the entire game. Not all of the attachments are too viable with it. The recoil and damage are okay, but however, the range and the attachments with this gun don't really work. For that reason, it is in the what is this category. Next up, the Thumper. The Thumper isn't too great. It pretty much works like a grenade launcher, and even then you can get a grenade launcher attachment on your assault rifle. It pretty much works the same as that attachment, and for that reason it is in the what is this class because it works the same. Next up, the TAR-21. Compared to the other assault rifles, the recoil with the TAR-21 is fairly high, but the damage is pretty high as well. The recoil is easy to work with, and most of the attachments work well with this gun. It has really good range as you can kill enemies from a far distance within a few shots. For that reason, it's in Coke Binge. Next up, the TMP. The TMP has low recoil and high damage. You can kill enemies from a far distance, and all of the attachments work pretty well. The only problem I have with the TMP is the low ammunition, so using extended mags is essential. Next up, the UMP-45. The UMP-45 has low recoil, high damage, and you can kill enemies from a far range. Every attachment is viable on this gun, and it's one of the best SMGs to use in this game. Not much else to say, it doesn't have any flaws. Next up, we have the USP-45. The USP-45 is in the I would use it category because it pretty much functions just like the M9. Moderate recoil, low damage, and that's about it. The attachments work well with them, but both guns are pretty identical. It's not a bad gun, it just feels very identical to the M9. Next up, the Vector. The Vector has low recoil and low damage, but it also has a very fast fire rate. Every attachment works very well on the Vector, and the very fast fire rate helps this gun out a lot. And last but not least, the WA-2000. The WA-2000 is a semi-automatic sniper rifle with low recoil and high damage. It pretty much plays the same as the M21 EBR. The most viable attachment to use on the WA-2000 would be the ACOG scope in my opinion. I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of the default scope. FMJ and extended mags are good choices as well if you're used to the default scope. The WA2000 is placed in great because it pretty much plays the same as the M21 EBR like I already said previously. Other than that, it's a good semi-automatic sniper rifle. That was my entire Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 gun tier list. I hope you guys did enjoy that video, and it's Mindset of AJ signing out.